Good morning and welcome back, YouTube Nation. MFJJ here, talking about the Hamskea Gen 2 Level 1. What's the difference between this one, the Gen 1, that some of you may have, some of you may not, and the Gen 2 one? This one is like 100 times better than this one, and I'm going to explain to you why. So come along with us for a minute and check it out. So let's start off by going over the original easy third axis level. It's a very great idea from Hamskea, and I'm not sure if Tim Gillingham designed this or who, but Tim's a genius and we should pay attention to what he does. He's a very smart man. But this is the original Gen 2 level, and the difference between this and this guy might not look like a ton, but this acts as a effective string level if you want to level your string, which personally I like to use a two-way level on my string. It's a little easier for me to get things perfect, and I still want to use this while I have my two-way level on, which we'll cover in a minute. But this guy has a much wider mounting base than this guy. This little set screw and this little flat plate, 90% of the sites I try to bolt this on to level my first axis rail on a movable site, it doesn't work. This bolts on everything. So if you're in the market and you haven't bought one yet, buy one of these. Don't buy one of these. These had their time, but this is an archaic tool compared to this tool. It's a little bit more, but not drastic, and I hope that's focusing in really good. But so without further ado, how this works. Number one, on a movable site, which is really what the intention of this is to set a third axis correctly, but it also helps you set your first and second axis. So what we have here is one of my bows, and it might be level, it might not. I haven't checked yet because I had this sight on a different bow, but I'm going to start by putting this little level right here on my rail, and then I'm going to grab a two-way level like I talked about. This is actually one we make. This is a two-way magnetic attachment level. Set it on your string, magnet holds it on, and use your vise if you have a vise. If you don't, this is going to be a really hard task, so I'd really encourage you to get a bow vise. It's super easy to get your bow set on a flat plane. So now, right in the middle of my bubble, right in the middle of my bubble, so I know the bowstring is perfectly straight. And if you know me at all, you know I believe the bowstring is the plane that everything matters on. Your riser straightness doesn't matter, how your sight's square on the riser doesn't matter, it's the bowstring's level nature that matters. Which you want to make sure you've actually tuned your bow and adjusted your cam system to a perfect tune before you try to level your sight, because if you manipulate your wheels, your string position is going to change and it's no longer going to be level. So tune the bow before you try to level up your sight. Now that I've got that level, I can see my bubble here is off a little bit and my bubble here is off a little bit. So I'm going to adjust my first axis first, and I didn't pull tools out ahead of time, so if I struggle for a minute to find what I need, I apologize for the delay. So there's that one, and that one I think is the right one. So on this black gold sight, that's the biggest one, thank you. On this black gold sight, you're going to loosen this guy right here, and then drive that little screw to move the bottom. Normally I don't have to loosen the top one too. If you don't have the first axis micro screw, is that the right size? This would just be loose and you'd have to hold it with your fingers and try to tighten it down, which is what makes this little guy really nice. See if I'm moving the right way here. There we go. Now if you go look at that bubble, it is like perfectly centered in there, and my bubble's here. Constantly look back and forth to make sure you didn't bump it or shift it, to make sure that those are perfect and that's perfect, and I cannot ask that to be better. So I'm going to tighten that down, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the other one just to be safe. These little long-necked handheld wrenches are priceless to me. It makes my job so much easier. If you're not doing it every day, it's probably not necessary to have tools like this, but man, if you're doing it a lot or just want cool stuff, these are pretty awesome. So now that I've got that set, I know that my string is now square to my first axis. So I no longer need the Gen 2 level on my rail to be able to set my bubble there. And it's almost perfect, but it's off just a tiny bit. Let's see if I got the right one here. Now, sometimes these screws in this sight ring are going to be really tight. Ooh, so you may need an angled wrench to loosen them up first. So I get them both loose, and then I'll actually use my wrench and push it just a little bit to straighten it up, and I went a little too far on that one. Almost, there you go. All right, now it looks about perfect. Oh, no, we're still that way, just a tiny bit. This is a very finicky thing because there's not a micro drive for it, so you really have to be particular about how you hold it and check it once you've tightened it. And this has probably been adjusted once on another bow, so there's probably a little groove in that sight ring that makes it want to go back to where it was. So be very, very careful and very cautious. Now, that looks about perfect. That bubble and that bubble match, and that one still looks good, so we're good. So axis 1 rail set, axis 2 scope housing matches the rail. So the last thing we have is the third axis, and I'll show you how that works with this guy, but we're going to have to get mobile for that. First thing you're going to do here is take this little pin here, and we've seen this lately on these. I don't know if they're just cramming out so many because they're so busy that there's a little burr, but you may have a burr on the edge here, and I just ran I think I put it back, but a regular screw that was the right thread all the way through it with a wrench, and cleaned out the burr, so this will thread in nicely now. But when I first got this, it wouldn't actually thread through. It would get to like there and stop. So if you run into that, don't try to cram it in there. You'll jack up the pin. Find yourself a screw with a wrench end on it that you can turn and push it through there, or if you have a tap in the right thread, just run a tap through it. But several of these that we've gotten lately have had a little burr on them, so keep that in mind. So that is what we're going to use mounted to the riser to set our third axis. And how this works is you draw it back, you get a vertical line, you point downhill, and put the top pin and the bottom pin on that vertical line, and then look at your bubble, and your bubble is either going to be left or right, and then your third axis screw, which in this side I've never touched, gets screwed in or out until it's perfectly straight, and we're going to go do that for you over there. Okay, so now that we're over to our vertical line, you're going to mount this onto your riser where you can see it. I'm going to widen it out a little bit. And you got to try to find a flat spot. Now it gets a little tricky, but if you look at it, you should be able to find somewhere you can clamp this on that's actually flat, that you can still see the needle and still see your pin. And if you look at how I've got that mounted up, it's not anything in line with my head. I need to be able to see that scope head and that bubble in there when I pull it back to make sure. Always, always, always put an arrow in your bow when you're drawing it back. Safety tip, you will blow up your bow if you accidentally let go of it in this scenario. I'd rather accidentally fire an arrow into a wall than explode the bow. So here we go. I'm going to line it up with this vertical line we've got right here and point it downhill and take a look at how my bubble looks. Oh, first one of the day, you might hear some popping. Oh, no, not bad. That was nice. So I'm going to point straight downhill. You don't even really need to look through your peep and line up that indicator needle. Now, if you see my bubble, it's off to the right. Now, the bubble in the Gen 2 level does not matter right now, so ignore it. Even though it's level, it doesn't really matter. But my sight head bubble is off to the right a little bit, so I need to make an adjustment. So I'm going to set this down. And then with two people in our shop when we do this, we usually just have the guy drop back and we'll adjust it at draw, and he won't even need to set the bow down. But you guys are probably at home by yourself, so we're going to cover that. On the black gold, you loosen this little set screw right here. That little guy right there is just to lock it in place after you've adjusted it. So loosen it up a little bit. And then come back over to this side and twist that screw. Now my bubble was, I'm going to have to think about this for a second. My bubble is this way, so I actually need the scope head to turn like this to compensate for that. And on this side, that means I need to screw it in. So I'm going to go in just a tiny bit. That was like 1/8 of a turn to not quite a quarter. Then I'm going to draw it back again and look at it, see what it looks like. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to line up. Once again, you don't even need to look through your peep. Just make sure you're paying attention to how you grip the bow, because this changes it. Okay, now I'm dead on. Now you see that bubble is like perfect, dang near perfect. I'm, trying to hold it, but yeah. So that's all you got to do. It's relatively simple. There are ways to try to do that without a tool. It is hours upon hours upon hours of trying to get that set. So this little $80 doodad is so worth $80. This will save you so much grief. I should probably show you too, the one thing I didn't show you. If you want to use it as your string level and as your clamp and as your third axis tool, which you can, I'll show you how it clamps on the string real quick. There's a little groove in here. If you can see it, that's where your string would go. So if you just tighten it up, so if you don't want to spend a whole bunch of money on several levels, you can, because of that bubble in the top, get it to where you can manipulate it into that hole. Now, I'll say I can't hold it there very well, but that's how you would set it and use it as a string level. I really prefer to have one on the string and one on the rail at the same time. You're going to have a hard time doing it that way, but if you're trying to skimp by as cheap as you can, you could use it as just your string level and your clamp level here. So that's another little feature it has for $79.99 shipped to your door. Really awesome tool. Really awesome little part. And I will let you guys know, these have been in short supply lately, but we just got 60 of them in. They're up on our website. We'll put the link down below so you can check it out. But this, to me, for $80 is really pretty cheap for what it does, in my opinion. These are a priceless little doodad. I keep them in my case. There's times where you can check if you bumped or fell on your site. You can check and make sure it's actually still level. It's not a bad thing to have. So in any event, Gen 2, don't ever buy a Gen 1 again, because these are so much better. Head on over to podiumarchery.com for all your archery needs. $99 and up is free shipping. If there's stuff you're looking for that you don't see on there, please message us and contact us. If we can list it, we will list it, get it up there for you so you can get it from us. Hit that like, hit that subscribe. Smash it, appreciate it. But more than anything, thanks for checking us out and thanks for just listening to what we have to say. Hopefully you guys are enjoying it, and hopefully I'm giving you a little bit of knowledge along the way and making you a little better archer, because that's who I am and that's what I care about. MFJJ. Check it out.